In 1983 came the famous Battle of the Bonds, a hype showdown between Cubby Broccoli's official Bond film franchise and another Bond production mounted by Kevin McClory, owner to the rights of Thunderball. While McClory had co-produced the original Thunderball film with Broccoli and Saltzman, he had become a constant annoyance to the franchise, a frequent courtroom enemy who claimed the rights to Blofeld and Spectre. There's a lot of bullshit in McClory's involvement with the franchise, but basically after Thunderball's release in 1965, he had to wait 10 years to remake it. After those 10 years, the official Bond films didn't want him to remake it, and a protracted series of lawsuits continued past the release of Never Say Never Again, his Bond remake, into the 90s with another remake of Thunderball with Timothy Dalton planned, supposedly. Sean Connery left Bond in 1973 for bigger stardom, but Connery really wouldn't get himself to his current awesome status until the late 80s, early 90s, with great roles in The Untouchables and Hunt for Red October. Roger Moore, though, had become pretty accepted in the role of James Bond, with The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker being massive hits. As far as who the real Bond was, the two were fairly evenly matched. Now, I was like less than a year old when these movies came out, so I could be very wrong about public perception. I also think it's worth noting that this famed Battle of the Bonds came during what could be, and often is, considered the worst time in the franchise. That's sorta hilarious in retrospect. Two middle-aged men go head-to-head with a cinematic character over a decade past his prime. And who won that battle? Never Say Never Again had a bigger opening weekend than Octopussy, and reviews at the time were far more positive. But Octopussy grossed more. In America, and worldwide, and on video, and it cost a good amount less, and it spent less on advertising. It seems pretty accepted that Octopussy won, financially, but Never Say Never Again was a better film. Now, for me, I'm vocally partial to Roger Moore, but if he's in a bad movie, I'll fucking point it out. This review is a full-on side-by-side review of each film, to each other, and on their own, and to past Bond films, and all that kind of bullshit, so here we go. Octopussy fires right out the gate with one hell of an opening sequence. Bond is in disguise at a horse race / military base with secret fighter jets with new radar or something or other that totally looks fake, and he's sneaking in to bomb this place, and he's captured. He escapes, and using this cool, very fake-looking horse ass and a trailer, he eventually pulls out in this badass tiny fucking plane, and what follows is honestly one of the most fun opening sequences in the franchise, as Bond whips around in this absurd little plane with a missile on his tail that he eventually gets to follow him and flies through the facility he was going to bomb like a badass, and it gets the missile to detonate, and the work with models and aerial footage and rear projection and other techniques makes this one of the best opening sequences in the franchise. It's a quick, inventive opening in the best tradition of Bond openings. It's followed by Rita Coolidge singing the terrible theme, All Time High, which is disappointing, because they should have just recorded a song called Octopussy. Come on, how cool would that have been? Octopussy, going to India and doing cool shit with VJ, yeah. Never Say Never Again starts at an undeniable disadvantage. They may have the con man back as James Bond, but they don't have the music, the gun barrel sequence, the regular actors, the production team that has produced films that all up to this point feel like James Bond films, and it's a remake, which always sucks. Never Say Never Again certainly has some stuff going for it, though. It's got Empire Strikes Back director Irvin Kershner, and even if Star Wars is dead to me at this point, I still can't deny how wonderful a film The Empire Strikes Back is. It has also got a bigger budget, about $36 million to Octopussy's $29 million or so, and it's got Bond hallmarks Spectre and Blofeld, which haven't been seen since Connery's last appearance in Diamonds Are Forever. Look, Bond films are all kind of samey anyway. Now, I also have to say that try as I might, it's hard to get into this movie and not be biased. The whole Kevin McClory story creates a nagging feeling to someone who's as nerdy about Bond as myself. He clashes with Ian Fleming, he clashed with fucking Cubby Broccoli, he just pisses you off. That said, I really can't hold much against him personally. I imagine being that close to something great, the money you're missing out on, the success you could have, holding the rights to Thunderball was his key to the big time. Not just for Hollywood glory, but for money for his wife and kids. It's hard to guess how anyone would act or be perceived if they were in a similar situation. I wish I owned the rights to fucking Thunderball, and you can bet your ass I'd try to get a remake made. So anyway, ranting done, and into the film. No pre-title sequence, but an action scene that takes place during the credits, and this awful, just horrid theme song. I mean, All Time High is lame. Moonraker's theme was lame. Bond has pretty bad themes usually, but never say never, never. It's not a good start. So we see Connery, and he's looking old, but that's to be expected. We sort of got to age with Roger Moore for the last decade, so it's noticeable when we re-see Connery. So Bond is busting his way through this jungle something or other, and that's cool. He's killing dudes, choking them out, and then he hilariously shoots this one dude in the neck with like a dart of some kind, like a tranquilizer or a poison dart, and the guy walks by and Bond shoots at him in the left side, and the guy's like, ah, and grasps the right side of his fucking neck. And I'm not like overanalyzing this. I laughed out loud when I first saw the film and that happened. And look, Bond films are riddled with gaffes, you can see. Octopussy has several overdubbed, lined, or mismatched scenes or obvious stuntmen. A lot of action films do, but this was really fucking silly. So this little intro goes on, and frankly, it's kind of boring. The standard pre-title works in a Bond film because the often terrible film theme music isn't AM radioing its lame self over the action scenes. Can you imagine how confusingly weird it would seem if Roger Moore was whipping around in that kick-ass little plane with all-time high blaring throughout the scene? Having the terrible song makes the action seem smaller, which it already is. It's kick-ass tiny plane with Roger Moore as badass versus Magnum P.I. worthy action schlock with crappy music where Bond is stabbed at the end. This is not a good start. Now yes, this is a different production. It doesn't have to be identical, but the rest of the movie unfolds in the standard Bond fashion, so I'm gonna fucking bitch about this shit. In Octopussy, to East Berlin we go, and we meet a clown. He's running away on foot from this fellow, who turns out to be two guys, knife-throwing twins, which is pretty cool. He gets hit in the back, the clown does, but survives just long enough to get across the border and die with a Fabergé egg rolling out of his hand dramatically. It's certainly an intriguing introduction to the story, and it is shot in these moody outdoor shots. It's simple, but it's interesting, and a better action scene than the opening of Never Say Never Again, and it has just a random fucking clown. So, in Never Say Never Again, Bond, stabbed, stands before M, who reviews his performance in apparently an evaluation. That's what the opening was? What? That doesn't make any goddamn sense, simply because Bond is fucking choking people to death and beating the shit out of everyone. I mean, I guess I could give it a little movie leeway, but you can hear this one dude's fucking death rattle. I mean, this is fine, whatever, I'll just let it slide. It doesn't matter. There's no way you could have guessed that this was going on, but, you know. So M is reviewing Bond, and he's a total dick, and M is not happy. It seems Bond died because he didn't guess that this lady he was rescuing was brainwashed, which M is furious about. You know, even though Bond made it single-handedly through an entire goddamn fortress. There are a number of references to M's predecessor and how Bond hasn't been out in the field for some time, which seems a way to connect him to Bernard Lee's M and Connery's last Bond adventure 12 years ago. It's not a bad little touch, and it helps to justify why this M sucks so much. I also like Bond's line about losing his legs to a landmine. It's lame, though, that the review footage they're watching is simply rewatching bits from the beginning of the film with the same angle switches, like they simply reviewed the dailies they shot for the scene. It's that lazy way of reusing footage Star Trek 3 and 4 would pull, where they just watched parts of the movie in the movie. So New M doesn't care for the double O's. He then says some bullshit about toxins and free radicals and sends Bond to Shrublands, the same place he went to recover it in the original Thunderball. Back over in Octopussy, Bond walks into Universal Exports and there's a brief scene with Moneypenny and her assistant, but there isn't really much of a point to it. I don't get why they have the assistant there. Roger Moore also gets a new M, and they discuss how the Fabergé egg the clown had is a near-perfect forgery, and the clown was actually 009 undercover, and the real egg, though, is being sold today at auction, and Bond is investigating whether Russians are selling the egg to fund covert operations, which sounds flimsy. We meet some comically communist Russians, including beloved General Golgo, and the villain here, though, is General Orlov, played effectively by scenery-chewing Steven Burkoff. He's given a little speech about Russian expansion that sets him up against the other Russian military leaders and effectively makes him a renegade who will provide us with some sort of villain. The scene takes place in this stellar, really badass spinning set that I just love. In Never Say Never Again, we're following around this chick to a rather small-looking Spectre meeting. Though I'm comparing this film to Octopussy, it's hard not to compare it to the original Thunderball. Blofeld here, played by the wonderful Max von Sydow, sits in this nice chair in front of like 11 people as they blandly discuss plans. In Thunderball, Blofeld sat face hidden above that wonderful Ken Adams set with the classic moment where Blofeld shocks a dude to death. Hey, hell, in Octopussy we got that kick-ass spinning set with the Russians. Here we get Blofeld flatly talking about stuff going on before passing the exposition torch to this dork who is our film's true villain, unfortunately. He's Spectre number 1, Maximilian Largo. He continues explaining the plot, how they got an American Air Force captain hooked on heroin and replaced his cornea with a copy of the president's cornea, however the hell you get a copy of that, and how this guy, Captain Patashi, is being sent to Shrublands where Bond happens to be. At Shrublands, there's a cute joke where Bond references him and the nurse having sexual relations, and they frame this shot so it kind of looks like they're doing it, but she's just cracking his back. And there's also a fun bit where she checks on Bond. He snuck in some super classy food and vodka, and it's a drastically different setup than the skirt-chasing borderline molester Connery was back in '65 in the original Thunderball. Captain Patashi is going through heroin withdrawals, and it is getting beat by Spectre number 12, Fatima Blush, and Bond hears the commotion of the beating, like across in another building, so he goes spying. He sees Captain Patashi's weird eye, and for some reason I can't fathom, he pulls the shade up on himself and scares the bejesus out of Patashi. I think it's like supposed to be an accident, but when I watched it, I rewatched this a couple of times, and no, for whatever reason, Bond reaches over and pulls the little pull cord on the window thing and stands there for like a split-second shock. Fatima Blush bolts back in the room and uses her cool binoculars to see that it's Bond, and she like instantly recognizes him. So, you know, good one, Bond. Eventually, Bond gets into a fist fight while working out with this hulking dude who's presented as some sort of Jaws-type henchman with like absurd strength, like weights bounce off of him when thrown at him, and he overpowers Bond in every conceivable way. And I noticed in this scene how many terrible faces Sean Connery made. Connery was looking kind of iffy 12 years ago as he rolled his eyes through Diamonds Are Forever. And though he seems at least to be jazzed about playing Bond again, he looks no better than Roger Moore, who's older. So the con man fights this hulking doof, and he's just getting his ass handed to him. And I don't think Bond has ever looked so ill-prepared for a fight. Also, this fight is surprisingly poorly staged, with like blocking that has nothing really to stand out except this split-second comedic bit where this old lady looks up at the guy and he casually stands there. Bond runs away like a pussy and continues to lose his fight until this big dude throws him into some sort of lab and picks him up and throws him against his stand, and then Bond grabs a container and throws it in the dude's face out of desperation. And since the length of the fight has apparently expired, this causes the guy to clutch at his face and stumble back into a shelf of various glass doodads, which for some reason all plunge themselves magically into his back. It's such a bizarre, boring ending to this lame little fight. I mean, the dude just tossed Bond through a whole shelf of glass shit, and none of it even scratched him. The film also takes the time to point out that Bond splashed the man with his own urine. So I guess he was just ucked out? That's stupid. No matter what, Bond just lucked out after desperately scrambling away in shame. Is this what Connery returned for? So Patashi goes through whatever he got hooked on heroin for, and I question the logic of creating a junkie to do complex computery things. I do kind of like the update to Thunderball's plotting by having the nukes be automated, cool, remote control missiles. The setup is a test of this remotely controlled missile they're using that has dummy warheads, but with Patashi's cornea transplant, apparently, the president can just sneak in and replace dummy warheads with real thing for shits and giggles without anyone else noticing. Fuck it, I'd let Octopussy get away with simplistic stuff, so whatever. So, to tie up loose ends, Fatima Blush, of course, follows Patashi in his car, and she throws a snake at him. Which is quite possibly the stupidest way to kill a person I've ever fucking seen, besides glass things being plunged in their back. Not only that, but after he wrecks his car from being scared about this snake, she casually walks back and lovingly picks the fucking snake up and puts C4 in the car to destroy it. Why didn't she just fucking bomb it in the first place? So Spectre has the missiles, and Blofeld calls in his ransom, in all of his cat-holding Colonel Sanders glory. I never realized that with the advent of the interweb and the prominence of cats on YouTube, how hilarious this ransom video seems in retrospect, being it solely focuses on Blofeld's cat throughout his entire speech. Back in Octopussy, Bond goes to the auction where the real Fabergé egg is being sold. Bidding starts, and the art expert points out one of the film's baddies, Kamal Khan. Bond dicks around by overbidding for the egg just to piss off Kamal, and it's a good build-up, and it's something different and interesting for a Bond film. Bond further sets up some intrigue by switching the real egg with the fake he brought with him, and he smartly tries to figure out if Kamal is up to no good. If he's legitimate, he'll complain it's fake. That's a nice setup. To India we go, mainly because Bond has never been, and Octopussy uses India to its full extent, and the location is great, if simplistic and cartoony. We are introduced to Agent VJ in a rather silly bit where he plays the Bond theme to get Bond's attention, and it's stupid, but VJ's a likable guy, so standard gambling with the villain follows, and Bond bets his Fabergé egg to further annoy Kamal. It's good stuff, and we also meet Gobinda, one of the series' more memorable henchmen.